My name is Matthew Bevis. I'm a fellow in English here at Keble, and I'm also based in the English department at Oxford. Most people know Edward Lear as a nonsense writer, as the author of The Owl and the Pussycat. But there's a longer story and a different kind of story to tell about him, I think. He had a very difficult childhood. The childhood was made more difficult by the fact that Lear had epilepsy, which was still seen as a shameful illness at the time. Suffered from asthma, bronchitis, so was in many senses a vulnerable child. He was brought up by his sister, and then didn't go to school, was educated at home, and started to try to make a living as an early teenager as a jobbing artist. So in many ways, Lear was entirely self-taught. So Lear then, in many ways, lived an itinerant life. He travelled. He didn't have the money for his own house until he was in his late 50s, and he travelled the world. He travelled to India, the Middle East, all over Europe, sketching, drawing, and estimates vary, but the most recent, I think the most accurate estimate of Lear's, just the level of the output, over a 50-year period, estimates are around 9,000 to 10,000 sketches or drawing, which works out about one every 2 days. But there's also, I think, a sense the sheer number of these pictures suggests a kind of incessancy of a need to almost diarize through pictures. Some of the items on show, Ikon, for instance, he arrives early morning at a temple in Egypt, and these little pictures are date stamped as, not just date stamped about the day, but time stamped. So you'll have 7:50, 8:10, 8:20, 8:25. So he worked at immense speed, and there's a need in him to capture the moment. I think the one of the main aims of the show really is to capture Lear in composition. There's this, looking at his sketches, things that were really never meant for the public, that were done privately as kind of notes to self, gives us a chance to eavesdrop on him in the middle of creation. We've been fascinated by the ways in which Lear annotates the drawings, adds nonsensical notes. Even in some drawings, there are glimpses of a figure that might have appeared in a nonsense limerick. The nonsensical and comic side of Lear puts in an appearance in the margins of some of these ostensibly serious sketches, and they are serious and sort of hauntingly beautiful. But there's also glimmers of play or a nonsensical way of being in the world. So, for instance, in one of the images, looking carefully at the notations, it's not just a little comment about some aspect of the landscape that he wants to remember, but actually a notation of a song that he can hear some of the local tribesmen singing. And then next to that, you have a snatch of verses that he's remembered from Tennyson. So you have this strange mix of the poetic, the topographical, the factual, the fantasized, all sort of dreamt up in the margins of the moment. These two sides of Lear, one I think is more akin to fantasy and the other more factual, kind of jostle for attention in the pictures. At one point, Lear describes his work as poetical topography. It's a really useful phrase, actually, to think about the kind of tussle for attention. The other thing, actually, about these notes in pictures is that they are often not at all engaged with the present moment, or they don't seem to be. So he'll sometimes write on pictures, reminds me of Hastings 40 years ago, when he's in Palestine, say, or the rocks in Italy remind him of the rocks he saw as a child. So there's a very strange way in which, when Lear is looking at a landscape, he's partly looking into his own past. So to look for him is actually to look back. There's a sense of self-exploration that's going on through the act of viewing the panorama that's in front of him. I think one of the main aims of the exhibition, or one of the things we really hope people take away from it, is actually, in an important way, a non-curated view of Lear. So these things are not finished. In a way, Lear was a sort of connoisseur of the incomplete. And what we're looking really at these pictures not as curated views or as kind of just finished stops on a grand tour, but as moments that capture an emerging drama of perception. We want to shed new light on a less well-known side of Lear. Lear is famous now for his nonsense, and rightly so. But it wasn't his first. In an important way, pictures were his first love. It's interesting, in fact, that he sold his nonsense verses to his publisher. He sold the rights away for something like £125, even though they were never out of print and they're still in print. He really desperately wanted to be what he called a great landscape painter. Now, much attention has been given, or more attention has been given to his finished pictures. One of the things we want to try to show in the exhibition is that there's a beautiful kind of spontaneity in Lear's unfinished work, the work that he himself didn't necessarily consider his best because of his ambitions to paint on a large scale, often in oils. But we're trying to sort of adjust the view and try and show just how powerful a sketcher and drawer he is.